Hi, I'm Dave Elfring, and I've been a security practitioner for a little over 2 decades. And later in my career, I found it necessary to manage risk. And so we found the factored analysis of information risk and began implementing that a couple of years ago.
Hi, I'm Melissa Hens. I'm a senior information security specialist, and I run a FAIR program at a mid-sized transportation and company in the Midwest.
And today we're going to talk about risk management, specifically focusing on risk triage.
So let's get started with the session.
And let's share a screen. So triage, and why does triage matter? And how does triage let you focus on what matters? And I love this quote from Carl Sagan that it's better to grasp the universe as it really is than to persist in delusion, no matter how satisfying and reassuring.
You might not think you're delusional, but this is going to provide you a bit of a reality check in how we manage risk and make sure that we know that our idea of risk lines up with what risk is in reality and how we can get there quickly through using triage and FAIR in tandem.
So the first thing I want to start out with is let's all get a common definition for risk, because in my discussions with people in different industries and at conferences and even in my own company, we often didn't have a shared definition. So we weren't talking the same language. And so we're going to devolve that down to a very basic, fundamental definition, which is to expose somebody or something to loss or to harm.
Ultimately, risk comes down to what you're losing. And executives, when they want to know what they're losing, generally that comes in the form of money, which is why FAIR is a great opportunity to show a range of risk that can be accurate and defensible, and gives the executives an idea of where they need to invest and where they can make the smarter decisions about priorities and resources to achieve the desired outcomes, as Doug Hubbard would say.
Right. And what I really love is we included a definition for risk management from Doug Hubbard, and it's about making smarter decisions about priorities and resources to achieve outcomes. And so everything about this triage process is going to be how you do the basic work to lead to the outcomes that we all want from a risk management standpoint. So to start risk analysis, it can seem really overwhelming. And so let's just kind of set the table by using an example that is very well defined. And so Alyssa and I were discussing this and decided, you know what, there are people that have been doing this for a while.
Yeah, medical personnel have been watching people die in front of them for thousands of years, and they had to come up with a way to make sure that the people who are in the most need, who can be helped, are the ones that get help first, and those who can wait, they get to wait in the waiting room. So triage is really about being able to elevate those priorities where you can help and nail that sort of prioritization of your risks and how that can blend in with desired business outcomes.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the entire objective here, kind of like medical personnel, is to find those really urgent cases and sort them out. What needs immediate treatment versus rapid attention? And what are the things that you can kind of move to the back burner? And in order to not be overwhelmed by the triage and get embroiled in the triage and just have it, you might never get out of triage if you can't learn how to prioritize and sort these. So, Alyssa, and talk to people about the reality check.
So dealing with reality can be very difficult, but it's something we all have to live with. The first thing to realize when you're going to start your FAIR journey and really get into the idea of triaging risks is you need to plan. And to plan, you need to sort of level set with your business executives, your business partners, and your partners within IT that risk is a loss and vulnerability does not equal risk. Uh, vulnerability is a part of your risk.
It's a weakness, right?
Concept, but it's not the entire field of your risk. Your risk is what you're losing. Vulnerabilities just play into that.
Yeah, and of course, now that we've all level set and we've got a common definition for risk amongst ourselves, what is the definition for risk for the executives? And at every organization I've ever been a part of, it's money. The risk is to money. It could be to how you make money. It could be fines and judgments. So the ways that you can lose that money, there are a lot of them. And some part of this is about establishing that common language and priority with the executives. And like we say here, don't forget that it's money that makes the world go around, well, the business world. And that leads us to show me the money. So we've defined risk. We've established a shared concern with our executives about money, and the real work begins. How do we define a revenue model for our business? Because this is how the businesses make money based on a schedule.
When we talk about triage and how you get the most out of it from planning ahead and thinking ahead about what those priorities might be and how you can get a firm grasp of what the current reality is, loss tables really play into where you can plan and where you can do a lot of prep work to make sure you're getting the most out of triage. Loss tables and getting the accurate data within those loss tables is going to feed accuracy throughout the rest of your assessments and scenarios. Every scenario you run and every asset you build is going to be tied to a loss table. And in some cases, those loss tables can cross businesses, things along the lines of PCI fines, or if sensitive data is breached, the cost of that is pretty standard across most industries. But one thing that you're really going to need to nail down, and that only people within your business are going to be able to help you with, are the revenue loss tables. So anything that has to do with the money that is made specifically by your business, you're going to want to plan ahead and talk with some of your business executives and find out who has that knowledge about revenue, when you make money, when you're not making money, and when would be the biggest impact to what could happen to the way you make money.
Yeah, and the funny thing about it is, as you start trying to find that information out, the sources where you get it may not be obvious at the start. So it's a bit of a treasure hunt. And so you may find, for example, that your C-level executives, when asked the question, might kind of give you blank stares. They may not, but they might. And it means you have to go find those people. And I think, Alyssa, you had to find the right people in the business that actually, could create those spreadsheets.
Yeah, when we started this, going to people in accounts payable and accounts receivable seemed like a good starting point, to talk to those executives, but they actually had no idea of any of those numbers. It ended up being in something that you would never expect, which was customer service. And so going out and talking to the business, that's where you're going to be able to find these little niche areas that maybe aren't where you expect, that will actually be able to flesh out your analyses and scenarios, and the data that supports those analysis and scenarios. They are not always where you're going to expect to find them, but in order to find them, you have to be out there engaging with your business partners.
And I think the really cool part about it is you do start to build a rapport with the business. And I think it's really essential to sell this as something that helps the business. And as you can see from the graphic, a basic Venn diagram, we kind of classified this as the place where risk analysis and business process overlap. And we have a shared common interest in the outcome of the creation of these loss tables. Take a number.
So in order to, Well, really, the entire point of triage is prioritization. Where do we need to focus? And where can we let things slide for a bit while we put out the most immediate fires? Triage with FAIR gives you a really easy way to elevate those by a number of different vectors. So if you're just looking at basic risk ranges and you want to say, what's our biggest, most crazy risk range that's up there in the millions of dollars and is happening all the time, that's triage is going to make it really easy to elevate those right up to the top so that you can deal with them immediately.
Yeah, and there's, as you get into the analysis, people tend to find reasons why it shouldn't work. They find part of the being overwhelmed is there are objections to it. And so we called it known knowns, known unknowns, and unknown unknowns. And
Well, we stole it a little bit from the DoD, but don't need to know that.
so, I mean, the thing is, I'm making my dad joke here, which is you are unique, just like everybody else. And what that means is almost anything you want to measure has probably been measured before. And like we talked about with regard to the loss tables, you have more data that's accessible to you than you think in terms of your subject matter experts, business matter experts. There's a lot of places you can find this data. It's likely there. And lastly, Bayesian, just because it's a really cool word, but it means you need less data than you think. We tend to want to create that perfect model. We want overwhelming amounts of data to support our analysis. And in reality, you may not need that much data.
I don't want to put you on the spot, Dave, but as far as pre-measured metrics, what are some good options for people to go out and find pre-measured metrics that have already been compiled and they're out there waiting to be used?
Well, so let's say you're in a financial sector or you're doing a risk analysis on a vendor who's in the financial sector or a specific industry. You can actually Google that. And I know that's how everybody Googles everything, but you can actually look for evidence of how often a breach happens, for example. And in sampling that, you might find 100 companies, and out of that, 20 have suffered a breach within a certain amount of time. That can actually be the start on your data. So it's not just the data within your company. You can find well-vetted sources of data to tell you things that you need to know to start your analysis. So I think there's something we need to talk about. Here's another great term, Dunning-Kruger. Alyssa, I think you've got some things to say about that.